Welcome to the Fantasy Football Hub channel for a special wildcard video. That's right, the big man Bakar has activated his wildcard for Game Week 10. In this video, we're of course going to be seeing Bakar's current draft, as well as firstly asking Bakar why he's hit the button. Bakar, pleasure to have you as always, mate. The wildcard is active. Tell us why.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jack. Hello and welcome to all the listeners and viewers. The plan was to activate it in Game Week 10. I did not have any of Liverpool's players. Liverpool have a great fixture swing. I did not have any Arsenal players. Arsenal have a great fixture swing. Same for West Ham, Brighton, all these kind of teams. I mean, I wanted to load up on these teams. I did not have Watkins, Cash. I think it was a fairly easy decision for me because I had sort of dead-ended my team into Game Week 9. And when you look at my team for Game Week 9, you sort of get the feeling that this team is on its last legs and it's sort of well past its expiry date. So it was time for a refresh, and which is why I already activated the wildcard. I hope that I can now nail the wildcard and jump in rank in the weeks to come.
Well, coming off the back of a good week anyway, a good solid green arrow, but yeah, as you can see on screen, a game week rating according to Fantasy Football Hub's My Team tool of just 81%. It's not really ideal in comparison to other teams. So what we're going to do in this video is build Bakar's draft position by position. Click reset team down here. Again, if you want to do this yourself and get your team rated by Fantasy Football Hub's AI, that's what we're going to do here, and you can do the same, link down below. Okay, Bakar, start us off. Who is going to be in goal?
I have Areola in goal as my first choice keeper. He started every game so far for West Ham, and he's put in some impressive performances. I don't think he's at risk of being dropped. And this is the first time this season that West Ham now have a very good stretch of fixtures from Game Week 10. This is precisely the week from where it begins. So I think he's an easy choice at 4.2. Minimal spend on keepers is always nice, and I see no reason to spend more.
Okay, and then the backup?
The backup I'm not entirely sure of. I can get Turner, I can get Strakosha. Let's say I think I'll probably go Strakosha because of that 0.1 saving. I looked at Turner's fixtures and I don't think in any of the next 8 to 10 weeks I'd be playing him over Areola. So I'm not really sure whether I want to pick him over him. And there's a greater chance that I might need the 0.1, so I might as well just save the 0.1 million and hope that Flecken with his sort of under par performances this season gets dropped in Strakosha. I can get Strakosha for the double, which Brentford have coming up in Game Week 20.
Yeah, absolutely. I was hoping that Flecken might get dropped for the last game week as a Strakosha owner, but alas, it didn't happen. Okay, so budget on the goalkeepers, to be expected, pretty standard keepers there. Let's move on to the defense.
The defense, the first few slots are fairly straightforward to pick. Gabriel is the first one. Great defense, great underlying data. Good fixtures for Arsenal coming up as well. And now we know that Gabriel has played well in recent weeks, so he's more or less secure in terms of starts. I can see him representing excellent value at 4.7. I think he's at least 0.8 million underpriced from where he should be.
Wow.
And Arsenal's underlying data is among one of the best in the league when you look at their XGC and not pen XGC. So very straightforward choice. I don't see a reason to spend more on Saliba or Ben White is fine, but Ben White is 5.5 and it's more expensive. So I don't really have the funds to go there.
Okay, yeah, solid pick in my opinion. Who is next to him?
Next to him is Matty Cash. I'm actually excited to own Cash. I didn't have him at all at any point this season. And I was sort of hoping that he keeps quiet in the previous 2 weeks as a non-owner. While I'm not entirely sure that he's going to play as a right winger, which he was, because some of the fixtures that are easier, and when the fixtures are easier, Unai Emery tends to play with Zaniolo, and Cash sort of tends to play as the right back. But still, you never know. There's the off chance that he might be playing as a right winger again, and if he does, then his attacking numbers are really good. Anyway, regardless of that, if you look at the fixtures, they have Luton at home this week, Forest away, and then they're Fulham and then Bournemouth as well, and 4 of the next 5. So I think it's a good pick.
Yeah, very, very solid. So far, your team is looking quite similar to Game Week 8 wildcards. But I know that there's going to be a couple players in there which really differentiate your team from those, like me, that wildcarded a couple of weeks ago. Who is your next defender?
The next defender I have is Tsimikas, who's a gift that I cannot simply ignore on Wildcard. I think you knew what was coming, so your question was directed towards this pick, and
Maybe
very smart of you. I mean, you're very experienced. You're now a pro at this, so you know what's coming. And yeah, Tsimikas, I don't think there's much to debate here at 4.4, 4.5 million. Easy pick, great fixture is coming up, and it's actually nice that his emergence has sort of coincided with Liverpool's promising schedule, which means that we can now sort of punt on him freely. Obviously, there's the off chance that he can miss a game here or there, but hey, that's what's the bench for.
Yeah, and the fixtures are so good, and we know that he's on quite a few set pieces, took a few corners last game. He gets forward as well. I mean, yeah, he's not as good a footballer as Robertson, but in terms of his attacking output, he is right up there. He can in many games. We saw it, when he came into the team a couple of seasons ago, matched Trent, which is a pretty crazy statement. But looking at the predicted points, he's up there for a reason. He does have the most predicted points out of any defender for the next 4 game weeks, which is it's bold, but there we go. Okay, so that is the 3 defenders. Who's your 4th one?
Yeah, so the next 2 spots are in the team are up for debate. I'm not entirely sure which defenders to pick in the 4th and 5th defender slot, but I mean, these 2 slots are tentative. It could be one of the 4th defender could be either of, let's say, Maguire or Guehi, depending on if I want a rotation. But I think both these defenders rotate really well with my team. If I feel confident that Maguire will be nailed going into the weeks to come, I might go with Maguire, or I might go with Guehi in this position. And there's this slight chance that I might even go with both Guehi and Maguire as my 4th and 5th defender. If not, then the 5th defender will be a cheap one like Taylor. I think that at 3.9 million, he's the best cheap defender that I can pick, and he can fill in if needed at any point as the 5th defender. But as I want to talk a bit more about the 4th defender, because when you look at the fixtures, especially in Game Week 12 and 13, they aren't exactly ideal for defenders. So United are playing Luton at home, and then they're playing Everton away, while Palace are playing Everton at home, and then they're playing Luton away. So essentially, the slot is to deal with Game Week 12 and 13, which I'm not entirely sure how to navigate if I don't fix this position.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So of course, thinking way ahead.
Because when you look at the rest of my team, Gabriel is pretty much perma play every week. So is Cash. But when you look at Tsimikas, he's playing City in Game Week 13.
Yeah.
So I want a defender in Game Week 13 as well. So I think this defense sort of goes well with each other.
Sure thing. Okay. Yeah, there we go. I mean, depending if you go with Gay, Maguire, maybe both. With Tsimikas, that is a very different defence to what we're seeing right now in the majority of teams. So I like it. I like it a lot. There's definitely upside there. And the value is important as well. These players aren't expensive, but you're getting them at a cut price just because they're not expected to be starters, right?
I know the United defence isn't great and their underlying data is bad, but
it's 4.2 million.
4.2 million exactly. I mean,
yeah.
You're not even gonna get a Luton starting defender at this point.
No, exactly. Yeah, the defenders that started that were at 4 million, they're now 4.1, 4.2 anyway. So a lot of them anyway. All right, okay. So that is the defense, and yeah, it looks good as I said. Let's move on to the midfield. This is what I'm really interested to see. These 8 positions here that I think you can go so many places on a Game Week 10 wildcard. Such are the fixtures. Let's go for it then. Who is in your midfield?
Yeah, the first 3 are locked. This is an easy one for me. So basically Salah, Saka, and Son. I don't think I'm going to go without either of these. Salah is likely going to be my captain this week in Game Week 10, and then also in Game Week 12 when Liverpool playing at home to Brentford. Because that's another week where City are away to Chelsea. So that's a week where Haaland could be swerved. Saka, I have him for the Arsenal fixture run from this week onwards. They're playing Sheffield United at home this week. And then next week, it's a tough fixture against Newcastle, but then Burnley at home. Now, these are fixtures where you can get those big 15, 16 point hauls, which are really chasing. Even after that, they have Wolves in Game Week 14 at home and then Luton in 15. So out of 3 of the next 6 game weeks, they're playing the promoted sides. I can't bring myself to go without Saka because the fixtures are just as good.
Yeah, I think that the question that I'd have about Saka is he definitely the best Arsenal midfielder to own now? Maybe we don't know this yet, but just because, Martinelli's back now, looking good. Is there any sort of, debate in your mind as to whether to go for him and save a bit of money if you need it somewhere else in your team?
Yeah, I mean, there are two schools of thoughts to this. I personally think that Saka is a better pick because when Arsenal are in the Champions League, Saka is more likely to play 90 minutes because Martinelli is more of a 75-minute guy, and you tend to see that the halls come at the end of the game. So you want the guy who's playing 90 minutes, which is more likely to be Saka than Martinelli. Saka's on penalties. And the other thing is that
Well, is he though? Well, is he though? That's because that's part of the point, is that he's not nailed on penalties, so that does diminish from his potential output. No,
even if he's sharing penalties, he's likely to share them with Odegaard. It's not that Martinelli will take them, right?
That's true. That's true.
And Odegaard's own underlying data hasn't been great this season, so he's someone I haven't really considered or given much thought. Martinelli, I've seen in drafts which don't have Son, and I can see at that price point you can then sort of get, let's say, rather than Son and a cheap price point, you can go with Bowen and Martinelli. But I can get him in my draft as a double up, but I'm not entirely sure whether I'll go there. These three slots, I want to talk a bit about Son as well.
Yeah,
Son is locked in my team as well because he's likely to play as the striker. Since game week 4, he's been smashing it ever since he's playing striker. This is basically since game week 4. So since he's playing striker among midfielders, he's first for XG, first for big chances, second for non-pen XG. So I just think that I see a lot of wildcard teams in this position where they're sacrificing Son and spending and distributing the rest of the cash elsewhere in midfield. 2 weeks ago, I sort of flirted with this idea as well, and I gave it a bit of thought. But now this week, I'm finding it hard because I don't see myself not bringing Son back in 3 or 4 weeks' time. So in 3 or 4 weeks' time, I'm pretty sure I'll want him back in, even if I sell him on wildcard this week. So do I really want to put myself in a position where I sell him this week and then I am scrambling to restructure the squad and bring him in later? I'm not sure. On a wildcard, I want to make a team which is as long-term as possible. And I just don't see that happening in a team without Son.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of banking in transfers at all. People say that, I'm not going to have a transfer to use in a couple of game weeks. It's very, very unlikely that nothing will happen to your entire 15 and you won't have a transfer to use, especially with the fixture congestion.
It's not one. I mean, unless something happens to Salah and you want to sell Salah, but
okay, yeah, I see
it's likely it's likely to be two. It's likely to be 2 transfers, which isn't ideal.
I mean, just looking at his stats here that I've got on screen from game week 4, as you said. So in those last 6 game weeks, he's got 60 points, 8 goal involvements. It's pretty impressive. I will say, however, your thoughts on the fixtures, because Palace away, I know they've been poor recently, but traditionally they're a decent defence at home. Chelsea have got good underlying numbers. Yes, Tottenham are at home, but not the easiest fixture. It's a derby. Wolves away, is that a guaranteed good fixture? Do you see what I'm getting at? These aren't the best fixtures necessarily. Yeah.
My counter to you is that he got a brace against Arsenal. Do the fixtures really matter?
It's true. We know he is probably the most elite finisher in the league in terms of.
It's very difficult because I mean, I'm finding it very hard to look past him because if he's playing as a 9, he's very difficult to overlook. I mean, he's FPL gold at the moment. And fixtures, I mean, you can argue that in these kind of games, for example, against Chelsea next week in game week 11, he's likely going to have plenty of joy on the break. And I mean, if I was to guess, I would guess that Son is on penalties as well. So my draft is basically built around some of these heavy hitters who I believe they're the talisman of their teams and are on penalties. So yeah. I don't want to really put myself in a situation where I'm scrambling to bring these guys in after having paid a wild card already.
There we go. I guess that is probably the crux of your team right there. Those 3 heavy hitters. It is very impressive. So let's see who's with them. Who is your 4th midfielder?
So apart from my 2 defenders, the 4th and 5th defenders that I mentioned, the 4th and 5th midfielder are equally up for debate as well. And there's every chance that I might change them before the deadline.
This is a tough spot. I think this is the hardest spot on wildcard, isn't it? Because there are a lot of options.
Yeah, these are the 4 slots, Jack, I'm not sure about in my team. And I am struggling to pick one over the other because when you look at the likes of Bowen, Matoma, Diaby, Gordon, Palmer, all these guys, I mean, it's difficult to pick, let's say, 2 of these, right? At the moment in my current draft, I have Bowen and Palmer. Palmer I can just play for the next two fixtures. Brentford at home, I think, is a good fixture for Chelsea. Then
Yeah.
so is Spurs away. I think it's fine. I expect Chelsea to score there, especially if he's on penalties. He's fine to play. And then I have a plan to bench him in game week 12 and 13 when Chelsea are playing Man City and Newcastle. So in this team, in this structure that I have, I don't really mind owning him.
Yeah.
And then he's a really good pick from game week 14 anyways.
Well, exactly. From 14 and then especially from 16, he's excellent. I mean, no one's debating that. I think he'll be in the vast majority of teams just for value at that stage. It seems a no-brainer. Okay, so yeah, Bowen as well. A word on him. You've mentioned lots of other. I mean, I'm just looking at the predicted points of all these sort of midfielders here. I've set the max price at 7.5, and they're all very, very similar. You've mentioned
I would suggest you
said.
I would actually suggest you set it to 8 million so that we can have a view on Martinelli as well.
That's fair.
Similar bracket. Yeah.
I was bringing it down, kind of 0.5 by 0.5, and yeah, Martinelli is actually he's not higher than Mitoma. It's actually Mitoma who's at the top of this with 21 points. I feel like I know why you haven't gone for Mitoma, but just explain why he's not. You haven't really mentioned him.
He could be in there. I'm close to him. It's not as if I've written him off. I have Bowen simply because of the long-term fixtures. When you look at the next 6, Bowen's fixtures are probably better than Diaby and Mitoma. But let's say if I was picking someone, if I picked Maguire over Gehi, then I have enough for Martinelli as well. So I can then pick Martinelli too. And Martinelli's next 6 are fine as well. And I don't really mind that either. Martinelli's fixtures are pretty
that must
good.
Be tempting.
The only problem
that must be tempting.
The only problem there is the next week Arsenal playing Newcastle, and I don't really fancy Arsenal. Arsenal's assets to have a high ceiling, but it's tough. It's tough. I can do that, and it's something which I'm playing around with.
Yeah, and then I mean, this obviously means that you're getting rid of Mbeumo, who's been so good for you this season. Why?
I love Mbeumo. He's done really well for me, and I was sort of comfortable with the idea of losing Trippier, but I still think Mbeumo is a very good pick. I still think Mbeumo is a very good pick, and he's the person I've been most reluctant to sell on Wildcard this week because I still think he's a good pick on penalties in the tougher fixtures. He plays in a 3-5-2, so I'm very uncomfortable going without him. But because the next 4 are tough, I can't really bring myself to sort of buy him. But
no, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, the fixtures, you have to look at the fixtures, even with someone that is on penalties, because I mean, you're looking at the likes of Bowen and even Villa players. Surely the upside is there for them with those fixtures rather than an Mbeumo.
Exactly. So that's the reason I'm not going with him. But Mitoma is not in my team because I sort of believe that there's this slight risk, I might be wrong over here, of him getting rotated because Brighton have 2 games against Ajax right before their favorable home fixtures against Fulham and Sheffield United in game week 10 and 12. Now, Mitoma's had a full week of rest, 2 full weeks of rest in the international week. He's not played at all. He didn't play for Japan. And Brighton don't have a midweek fixture either next week. They're not in the EFL Cup. So he could be fine. And if he's fine, then I don't think there's much between him and Mitoma. Him and Bowen.
It's a tough one, isn't it? It really is a tough. I mean, I love Bowen as a pick, but he is 0.9 more. But Bowen for me, when I wildcarded an 8, was completely nailed. His goal was lucky the other day, but as you mentioned, I think he does have the best long-term fixtures, or at least of the next 5. And he's so talismanic as well.
There is a world I can go Mitoma and Diaby as opposed to Bowen and Palmer. Yeah. I can do that.
But I mean, you said it. That's the thought that's up in the air right now.
It will come again. It will come at the cost of a few compromises. For example, I'll have to forego the Maguire slot for a Branthwaite, and maybe even downgrade my 4.5 million striker to Mobama. So it's not exactly an ideal position to be in. I can do Mitoma plus Gordon more comfortably.
Yeah.
But again, you can see where I'm coming from, right? These 4 slots that I've spoken about, there's not much between them. And it just feels as if whatever happens will come down to luck and variance and not because of poor decision making.
I think that's fair. I think you can do a lot of research and look at all the stats of all these players that, let's be honest, are pretty similar, and ultimately it is going to come down to perhaps form, even though the fixture are very similar. And I don't know, DRB is one that I probably would swerve right now out of the ones that you have mentioned, just because despite the unbelievable fixtures, I feel like you are going to have a little piece of the Villa attack in your next three. Do you have to double up there? Are there other options you could go to? Let's move on to the forwards. I think these pick themselves, right?
Yeah, I mean, Haaland and Watkins. I mean, there are a few people who were asking whether it's still wise to pick Haaland. Absolutely. The only reason why you won't pick Haaland right now is if you wanted to pick Trent and Trippier on wildcard. And with Trent, I think he's sort of been taken out of the equation with Simicast 3 million cheaper. And with Trippier, when you look at the fixtures for Newcastle, they're tough. They're tough. They're playing some of the top sides. I know they're at home, Arsenal, Chelsea, United, but Spurs is away as well. Even Wolves away this week isn't the best of fixtures. In the reversed fixtures, in 7 of these reverse fixtures that Newcastle have coming up, Newcastle kept just 2 clean sheets last season. Again, this is giving me confirmation bias to think that Trippier is not worth it. And if he's not, and Trent is not, then where's the Haaland money going to go? Haaland is, you don't have anywhere else to spend. So Haaland, I think he's a bit of a no-brainer, especially with Bournemouth at home in Gameweek 11. I know a lot of people sold Haaland and were on the good end of variance 2 weeks ago on wildcard, but I don't think this is the time to get rid of him. If anything, I would be planning to bring him back if I didn't own him. And the second striker I have is Watkins. Yeah.
Yeah. Watkins picks himself. Let's be completely honest. He is one that I need to get him in. I think I don't think that any player ever is essential. We've seen people that have sold Haaland who has been the most essential fantasy pick over this season and the last one, that they've done better than those who haven't, purely on captaincy points alone a lot of the time. But Watkins, Alvarez has gone, right, from your team. But Watkins has to come in, doesn't he?
Again, a reluctant sell.
Yeah.
Not exactly one who I was comfortable getting rid of, especially considering that City have a free midweek against, and then a fixture against Bournemouth next week. I expect a trouncing. But like you say, you can't have them all. The only way I can get someone like a Darwin or Alvarez is if I pick and go with the 3-4-3.
Yeah.
But I've gone with the 3-5-2 because of the midfield options that we have available. Let's say if Darwin doesn't play tomorrow, then he becomes more of an interesting option. I think I'm closer to Darwin than Alvarez.
Really?
But again, I mean, if Darwin does not play tomorrow, he's an excellent pick for the fixtures to come.
I mean, I have seen him in a few drafts, and it's one of those that if you nail him, if you know that he's going to start or at least get good minutes, we know how explosive he can be.
Alvarez is fine as well. I mean, Alvarez is not bad, but
that's the thing. He's just fine, isn't he? He's no Watkins. He's just like, he's okay. But he's not optimal on a wildcard. He's a steady
Eddie. Yeah, he's a steady Eddie.
But do you want that on wildcard? I don't know.
Again, it's debatable. If I owned him, I think he's a perfectly fine player to keep. But it's, again, I mean, for your own team, I assume you own Alvarez and you don't have Watkins, right? So you're swapping Alvarez to Watkins, I believe, right?
Well, my team is up in the air. We'll leave that for another time, because this is about your team.
My question is that you're looking to get to Watkins, right? So
personally,
right, so
I'm looking to get to Watkins. Yeah.
Exactly. So if you're on a wildcard, you have to prefer Watkins over Alvarez, even though Alvarez is a good pick, but
100%.
He's not in the same level. I think we sort of tend to look at Watkins as a very good player from a mid-table team. I think he's an elite pick. I would put him in that Saka Son bracket.
Agreed.
He's been so consistent. Since Unai Emery's taken over as manager, only Salah and Haaland are averaging more FPL points per start.
Yeah.
And only they have more goal contributions. I mean, Watkins is right up there in terms of goal involvements.
And just look at Villa as a team right now. I mean, they're just absolutely flying. There's noise about them getting in the Champions League. If they can sort out their away form, I don't really see why that couldn't happen. They're so good at home. They're so free flowing and free scoring. And yeah, with Watkins, up top for that team doing so well. I mean, his finish in the last game, it was just brilliant. Just so good. He's just obviously such a good player. But yeah, has to be in a wild card in my opinion. And yeah, personally for me, I'm going to be trying to work out for the rest of this week how on earth I get him in. But that is the team, mate. And it looks very good. Before
Archer.
Yeah, sorry, you're right. I put Archer in. I did put Archer in for you. But
I mean, if I was short of cash and if I wanted to get 0.2 million, I could possibly then get Mobama. But if I don't need the cash, then I think I'll pick Archer.
Worth mentioning, this says that you have minus 0.5 million in the bank. it's impossible for the site to work out exactly what your selling value is, so it just does it to 100 million. But Bakar, how much money do you have in the bank actually, Bakar, with this team?
I think 0.4 million.
Okay, so your team value really isn't actually that bad. It's about roughly 100.9. Given that you held on to those United assets for so long and lost value there and stuff, it's actually all right.
It's all right. I mean, especially when you have gifts like Tsimikas and Palmer and all these guys emerging, Gordon. Gabriel is so cheap. Is it really that
Palmer
much of a factor?
Well.
I don't. Exactly, I've mentioned Palmer. So maybe even acquire from now on in. Who knows?
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, that's the team. I like it a lot. I feel like what people may have, I don't want to be rude or mean here to people that said, oh, how is a Game Week 8 wildcard or a Game Week 6 wildcard going to be different to a Game Week 10 wildcard? But football moves on very quickly. Tsimikas and Maguire were not good. Palmer were not going to be in any teams, were they? Now they are.
And just on this point, I mean, Game Week 8 wildcarders have made their gains, but I think that basically saying that Game Week 10 wildcarders are in the mud and there's no way back for them is high exaggeration. I mean,
of course.
I completely don't agree with it. I mean, I actually compared my Game Week 8 draft after these 2 weeks to compare how it would have done as opposed to my initial team. In my initial team, I had Trippier for 2 weeks, who's absolutely killed it. I wouldn't have had him on a wild card. I wouldn't have had him Bomo. And Bomo got 14 points this week. I wouldn't have had Sterling in Game Week 8 when he got that 16 point.
For your team, that's massive.
Exactly. So even though I didn't have Salah, I've survived. It's very team dependent.
Yeah. The final point I want to talk about is captaincy for this week. Predicted points still has Haaland at the precipice of all the players in your team, and in fact all the players in the game. But who are you going to be going with?
I'm going to be going with Salah for sure. I don't think I'm looking at anyone else this week.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
I mean, I generally like going with midfielders if I'm not going with Haaland. And I think that after Salah, Saka is probably the best one this week. But I think Salah is in a higher bracket as opposed to Saka when it comes to underlying data. He's slightly more trustworthy. And we know that he's definitely on penalties with Saka. We don't know that, as you mentioned earlier. So yeah, he's just in a different bracket. Yeah.
Okay, mate. So that is going to do it for the team. A very high
Thank you very much.
Gaming rating, very high team rating as you'd expect. 96%. I haven't optimized it for future game weeks with captaincy and stuff, so that would go up a little bit more if I was to go through the individual game weeks. But there we go. You've got to be happy with that. Predicted points of around 70. Very solid with some fun picks in there. I mean, yeah, Palmer, Tsimikas, Maguire. I love it. It means you can have that really strong core and just have some other fun picks floating around. I like it a lot. Guys, if you are on Wildcard 10, or if you're tempted by it as well, maybe you had a similar team to Bakar's that I showed at the start, and you're looking at this team, you're thinking the upside really is there, and you want to mess around with it without doing it on the site and having to think about, potentially getting things wrong, and, when you sell players and you lose value and you buy them back and you make that mistake. We've all done it. Then mess around with it on Fantasy Football Hub. Link to do so is down below. As you can see, get your team rated for free, clicking the link in the description. If you like what you see and you then want to have a look at all the stats that I've shown in this video, the predicted points, etc., you can sign up, 30% off and a 7-day free trial. But Bakar, as you rub your eyes in just complete bemusement at the sight of this phenomenal wild card, are you happy with it? Are you content now with Game Week 10 overall? Is it good? Are you satisfied?
I'm content with the core of the team, which is what I care for. I mean, these 4 slots that I'm not sure on. I mean, I can debate long and hard, but again, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to variance. But it's good that I'm not losing too many sleeps over the wild card, and I'm content with the core of this team, which is exactly what I want.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it? You don't have to make too many, major decisions. You're not thinking of leaving out premium players. They're all in there. You've got them all. It's just the fun picks around them, which you're deliberating on. And we'll see come the deadline on Fantasy Football Hub once again with your final team reveal, who you do end up going with. I'm looking forward to it, mate. I'm looking forward to it a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for revealing your Game Week 10 wildcard. Great stuff in there. Guys, thank you for watching. And we will see you next week as we look at the results, after one game week only, but the results of Bakar's Game Week 10 wildcard.